Cops handcuff a Latina commander. But one military gesture destroys their careers. It was an ordinary afternoon in the small city of Ridgeview, the kind of place where police patrols were routine, and the sight of flashing red and blue lights barely turned heads anymore. But that day, something unusual was about to unfold, something that would echo far beyond the city limits and into the upper reaches of power. Commander Isabela Ramirez, a decorated Latina officer in the U.S. Army with over 2 decades of service, had just returned from a classified mission overseas. She wasn't dressed in uniform that day. Instead, she wore a simple dark jacket, jeans, and a pair of aviator sunglasses. To the casual observer, she looked like any other civilian, a mother, a professional, a neighbor. But beneath that exterior was a woman who had commanded elite units, negotiated with foreign leaders, and carried the weight of national security on her shoulders. Driving home from the base, Isabela stopped by a local coffee shop. She carried herself with quiet authority, the kind that doesn't need to be spoken. Yet as she returned to her car, she noticed 2 squad cars pulling up quickly, boxing her in. She frowned. Something wasn't right. Within moments, 2 local officers approached her. They looked tense, almost aggressive. "Ma'am," one of them said sharply, "step out of the vehicle." Isabela's instincts flared. She had encountered dangerous situations across the globe, but she never expected hostility in her own neighborhood. Calmly, she asked, "Is there a problem, officer?" The taller cop, Officer Harding, sneered. "Don't play games. We got a report about a suspicious vehicle." "Step out now." Suspicious vehicle? Isabela thought. Her car was registered, insured, and bore a base parking permit on the windshield. Still, she complied, moving slowly. Years of military training told her not to escalate. But the officers weren't interested in explanations. The moment she stepped out, Harding grabbed her arm roughly, twisting it behind her back. His partner, Officer Riley, quickly cuffed her wrists. Isabela's jaw tightened. She wasn't just shocked, she was calculating. These men weren't following protocol. Passers-by began to stop and stare. To them, it looked like a standard arrest. But what they didn't know was that the woman being forced into handcuffs had more authority than anyone on that block, including the officers who thought they were in control. "Listen carefully," Isabela said firmly, her voice steady. "You're making a grave mistake. I am Commander Isabela Ramirez, U.S. Army. You're interfering with a federal officer." Harding laughed dismissively. "Yeah, right. And I'm the president. Save it." His partner smirked, adding, "Nice try. We'll sort it out downtown." But Isabela didn't resist. She had endured worse than this. Combat zones, ambushes, intelligence missions gone wrong. Instead, she stood tall even in cuffs, her presence radiating authority. "You don't understand who you're dealing with," she warned, her words calm but edged with steel. Within minutes, they shoved her into the back of the squad car. Onlookers pulled out their phones, recording clips that would soon go viral. None of them knew they were witnessing the opening act of a story that would destroy careers, trigger federal investigations, and remind the world that some lines should never be crossed. As the squad car pulled away, Isabela's eyes stayed sharp, fixed on the horizon. She wasn't worried about herself. She knew that once the right signal was given, these men would learn a lesson that would follow them for the rest of their lives. Because Isabela Ramirez wasn't just a commander, she was a key figure in national security, someone entrusted with powers that reached far above the jurisdiction of Ridgeview PD. And in a matter of hours, these cops would discover the true meaning of the phrase, chain of command. The squad car rattled along the uneven streets, its sirens silenced but lights still flashing, announcing to the world that an arrest had been made. Inside, Commander Isabela Ramirez sat in silence, her hands cuffed tightly behind her back, the cold steel pressing into her wrists. She wasn't panicking. She had been trained for worse situations, blackouts, high-stakes hostage negotiations, interrogations in foreign countries. What unnerved her wasn't fear for herself, but the reckless ignorance of the 2 men in the front seats. These weren't seasoned federal agents operating under careful orders. They were small-town cops with oversized egos, too blinded by power to realize what they had just done Harding glanced into the rearview mirror, smirking. Not so tough now, huh? Bet you thought you could just mouth off and get away with it. Isabella's eyes met his in the mirror. She didn't blink. You've made a mistake that will follow you for the rest of your career. The Army doesn't take lightly to the unlawful detention of one of its commanders. Riley chuckled. Oh, please. Everyone's a commander these days. Next, you'll tell us you're CIA. But deep down, Riley shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Something about her composure didn't add up. Most people squirmed in cuffs, begged, or shouted. This woman sat still, her back straight, as if she were the one in control. When they reached the precinct, Harding yanked her out roughly, ignoring her warnings. The station lobby grew quiet as they paraded her inside. A few officers at desks looked up, frowning. It wasn't every day a woman walked in cuffed and calm, speaking with the clipped authority of a senior officer. Booking room, Harding barked, pulling her toward the back. But before the process could begin, Isabella did something small, subtle, but powerful. She adjusted her stance, rolled her shoulders, and then, even with her wrists bound, made a controlled military gesture, a signal only recognizable to those with training. To most of the officers, it looked like nothing more than a shift in posture. But one man across the room, a young sergeant named Daniels, recently back from deployment, froze. His eyes widened as he recognized the unmistakable hand and wrist movement, a silent code used by field commanders when signaling an urgent chain of command. Situation. Daniels stood up immediately. Sir, he stammered, correcting himself. Commander? Harding frowned. What the hell are you doing, Daniels? Daniels' voice was steady now. She's not lying. That's a federal recognition. Signal. Sir, she outranks everyone in this building. The room tensed. Several officers shifted uncomfortably. Harding's face reddened. Don't be ridiculous. She's just some civilian trying to play tough. But Isabella spoke clearly, her voice carrying the weight of authority. Sergeant Daniels is correct. I am Commander Isabella Ramirez, United States Army. Badge ID 4521 Delta. You are unlawfully detaining me, obstructing federal operations, and violating jurisdictional law. I strongly advise you to release me immediately before this escalates beyond your control. The booking room fell silent. Riley licked his lips nervously. Harding, maybe we should double-check. Harding snapped. No, she's bluffing. We stick to procedure. But Daniels wasn't convinced. He pulled out his phone and quickly accessed a secure military verification portal, something most civilians didn't even know existed. His fingers flew over the screen. 30 tense seconds later, he looked up, pale. Sir, she's telling the truth. Daniel's voice carried through the room like a gavel hitting wood. She's a commander, Special Operations Division, highly classified clearance. Gasps rippled across the room. Several officers took a step back. Harding's smirk vanished. Isabella's eyes narrowed, her patience thinning. Remove these cuffs. Now. But Harding, too stubborn to admit fault, crossed his arms. Even if you are who you say you are, you don't get to walk in here like you own the place. This is Ridgeview PD and we don't take orders from outsiders. The arrogance was astonishing. Isabella leaned forward slightly, her voice dropping into a tone that had made hardened soldiers snap to attention overseas. Officer Harding, you have 10 seconds to remove these cuffs before I make one phone call that will end your career, and possibly your freedom. Choose wisely. The room held its breath. Riley swallowed hard. Daniels looked at Harding, almost pleading. Sir, don't do this, she's not bluffing. But Harding's pride was his downfall. He shook his head. We'll let the captain sort this out. That was it. Isabella closed her eyes briefly, then exhaled. She had given them every chance. The gesture she had made earlier wasn't just for Daniels. It was also a signal that activated a silent protocol. Somewhere in the background of national security, operations, her status had already been flagged. And now, the storm was on its way. As Harding shoved her toward a holding cell, Isabella didn't resist. She simply looked over her shoulder and said quietly, You just put yourself on the wrong side of the United States military. The words sent a chill down Riley's spine. Because deep down, he knew something big was about to happen. The holding cell door clanged shut, the echo rattling against the cinderblock walls. Commander Isabella Ramirez sat on the narrow bench, her wrists still cuffed, though the metal restraints hardly mattered anymore. She knew the gears of military protocol had already begun grinding, and those gears were unstoppable. Isabella had served long enough to know the exact sequence of events that would follow her coded gesture. Within minutes, her status had been flagged as detained by unauthorized personnel. That single notification traveled through encrypted channels, triggering an escalation path that reached far above Ridgeview PD. Across the city, ordinary life continued. People shopping, traffic flowing, children playing in parks. But inside the Pentagon, a red indicator light flashed on a secure console. A monitoring officer's eyes widened as the screen displayed Commander Ramirez, detained, civilian jurisdiction breached. Immediately, comophones rang. Emails were dispatched. A general was briefed. In less than 10 minutes, the U.S. Army had convened an emergency response team. For Isabella, time seemed to crawl. For Ridgeview PD, time was running out. Back at the station, tension hung thick in the air. Officers whispered among themselves. Some had seen Sergeant Daniels' verification. Others were still clinging to Harding's stubborn defiance. But one truth was undeniable. The woman in their holding cell was no ordinary detainee. Riley paced nervously. Harding, I don't like this. Daniels confirmed it. She's the real deal. Harding waved him off. She's not untouchable. Military or not, she's on our turf. We'll process her. Let the lawyers figure it out. Daniels slammed his fist on a desk. With all due respect, sir, you don't understand. She's not some mid-level officer. She's Special Operations Command. That means classified authority. She could walk into a Pentagon briefing and have half the room stand at attention. We're talking about someone who gives orders that ripple across entire regions. His words silenced the room. But Harding, too, blinded by arrogance, muttered, "Overblown nonsense." That was when the rumble of engines shattered the quiet. From the front windows, officers saw them first. 3 matte black SUVs pulling up fast, escorted by 2 unmarked Humvees. The vehicles stopped with precision in front of the station. Within seconds, armed military police stepped out, their uniforms crisp, their movements disciplined, their presence radiating authority. Riley's mouth went dry. Oh hell. The station doors burst open. A major in full uniform strode in, flanked by armed MPs. His voice was sharp, clipped, every syllable carrying weight. "Where is Commander Ramirez?" The room froze. Harding hesitated, his pride warring with his survival instinct. She's in holding," he muttered. The major's eyes narrowed like steel. "Take me to her." Now. Harding reluctantly led the way, his confidence faltering. The group swept through the station like a storm. Other officers scrambled to stand aside. Daniels followed, relief washing over him. When they reached the cell, Isabella looked up calmly. "You took your time," she said dryly. The major's stern expression softened into respect. "Commander, we moved as quickly as protocol allowed. You're secure now." With a sharp nod, he turned to his men. "Unlock those cuffs." Immediately. An MP stepped forward, key in hand. The clink of the cuffs releasing echoed like a verdict. Isabella rubbed her wrists, then stood tall, every inch the commander she was. The major faced Harding, his voice dropping into ice. "Who authorized the detention of this officer?" Harding stammered. We got a report about a suspicious vehicle. Standard procedure." "Standard procedure?" the major snapped. "You handcuffed a decorated commander of the United States Army without verifying her identity. Do you have any idea the level of violation you've just committed?" Riley stepped forward quickly, words tumbling out. "Sir, I told him we should check." Sergeant Daniels confirmed it. Harding wouldn't listen. The major's gaze cut through Harding like a blade. "You're finished. Effective immediately, you are relieved of all authority pending federal investigation." Gasps rippled through the room. Harding's face turned pale. Isabella stepped forward now, her voice carrying the calm authority that silenced even the major. "Stand down. Let me handle this." The major hesitated, then nodded, stepping aside. Isabella faced Harding, her eyes unwavering. "I warned you. I told you who I was. Instead of listening, you chose arrogance over protocol. You humiliated yourself, your department, and endangered your career. But worse, you compromised national security." Harding tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. His usual bluster was gone, replaced by the realization of how deeply he had stepped into quicksand. "Effective immediately," Isabella continued. "You are under military jurisdiction for obstruction and unlawful detention of a federal officer. MPs, take him." Two military police stepped forward, gripping Harding's arms. The irony was thick. Moments ago, he had been the one cuffing Isabella. Now he was the one being restrained. His protest fell flat. "You can't do this. I'm a cop. I have rights." The major's voice cut through his shouting. "You should have thought of that before crossing the United States Army." As Harding was dragged away, silence hung heavy in the precinct. Every officer present knew they had just witnessed a career implode. Isabella adjusted her jacket, standing, taller than ever. She turned to Daniels, her tone softening. "Sergeant, thank you for recognizing the signal. Your quick action prevented this from escalating further." Daniels straightened, saluting instinctively. "Just doing my duty, ma'am." She gave a small nod, then faced the rest of the station. "Let this be a reminder. The uniform I wear may not always be visible, but the oath I carry is constant. Never assume authority where you have none. The consequences are greater than you realize." Her words sank deep. Officers shifted uncomfortably, many avoiding her gaze. Riley exhaled slowly, whispering to himself. "We're screwed." Outside, the military convoy waited. Isabella walked out flanked by MPs, the picture of command. The cameras of onlookers captured the scene, clips that would later flood social media, sparking outrage, debates, and national headlines. But inside Isabella's mind, one thought remained. Steady. This wasn't over. Harding was only the first to face consequences. The system that allowed such arrogance and ignorance to flourish needed to be addressed. And Isabella Ramirez, the Latina commander who had been wrongfully cuffed, was about to make sure that happened. By the next morning, Ridgeview wasn't the same quiet town it had been the day before. The incident at the police station, recorded on shaky cell phones, live-streamed on social media, and dissected by local reporters, had exploded into a nationwide firestorm. The clips were damning. One video showed Commander Isabella Ramirez being shoved into the back of a squad car, her calm warnings ignored. Another captured the moment military police stormed the station, releasing her and arresting Officer Harding. Within hours, hashtags were trending. #Latina Commander, #Cuffed by Cops, #Chain Off Command. Morning news anchors debated the story while commentators across the political spectrum weighed in. Was this another case of small-town police overstepping their authority? Or was it proof of a deeper arrogance in law enforcement culture? The details hardly mattered. What mattered was the image of a decorated Latina commander being humiliated by men too proud to listen. At the Pentagon, generals weren't just angry. They were livid. The unauthorized detention of a commander wasn't just embarrassing, it was a breach of national security. Phone calls buzzed between military leadership and federal oversight committees. By noon, an official inquiry had been announced. Ridgeview PD was now under federal review. Inside the police department, morale collapsed. Officers walked on eggshells, waiting for the next wave of consequences. Harding was already gone, locked in a federal holding facility pending charges. But everyone knew he wouldn't be the only one. Paperwork, reports, and surveillance footage were being seized by investigators. Lawyers hovered like vultures. Officer Riley sat in the break room, his head in his hands. He replayed the entire chain of events over and over, how easily it could. have been avoided if Harding had just listened. "We're finished," he muttered. "The whole department's reputation done." Sergeant Daniels, the one who had recognized Isabella's signal, was the only one holding steady. But even he knew the atmosphere had changed forever. Officers who once strutted with confidence now kept their voices low, wondering how much longer. They'd have jobs. Meanwhile, Isabella was not interested in hiding from the storm. She walked into a packed press conference, her uniform pressed, medals gleaming on her chest. The cameras flashed furiously, capturing every detail. The Latina commander who had been wrongfully handcuffed, now standing tall and unapologetic. She began without notes, her voice even but commanding. "Yesterday I was unlawfully detained by members of the Ridgeview Police Department. I identified myself as a commander in the United States Army. My words were ignored. My credentials were dismissed. Instead, I was humiliated, handcuffed, and locked in a cell." Gasps rippled through the audience. The room was silent except for the clicking of cameras. "I am not here today for myself," Isabella continued. "I am here for every citizen who has been dismissed, ignored, or mistreated by those sworn to protect them. I had the power and the rank to summon help, but imagine those who don't. Imagine those whose voices are silenced because someone in authority chose arrogance over duty." The crowd erupted in applause. She let the moment settle, then added, "I respect law enforcement. I have worked alongside them in joint operations. I know the dangers they face, but respect is earned through accountability. Yesterday, accountability was absent in Ridgeview, and now it will be restored." The press conference went viral within minutes. Headlines hailed her as a hero. Latina commander speaks truth to power. Military officer shatters silence. On abuse of authority, from cuffs to courage. But not everyone was cheering. Behind closed doors, Ridgeview's police captain, Harold Sims, was in crisis mode. Federal investigators had already interviewed half his staff. The mayor was on the phone demanding answers, and angry citizens were outside the station, holding signs that read, "Justice for Isabella" and "Accountability now." Captain Sims rubbed his temples, exhaustion etched across his face. "This is a disaster," he muttered. Riley, standing across from him, swallowed hard. "Sir, with respect, it's worse than a disaster. People want heads to roll, and Harding isn't going to be enough." Sims glared. "Are you suggesting we sacrifice more of our own?" Riley's voice trembled. "I'm suggesting we face reality. This won't end until the department shows it's willing to change." That same evening, federal prosecutors confirmed that charges were being prepared against Harding: obstruction, abuse of authority, and unlawful detention of a federal officer. But whispers circulated that the investigation could widen. Supervisors, watch commanders, even Sims himself could be implicated if it was found that the culture of arrogance ran deeper. And Isabella? She wasn't finished. She was summoned to testify before a joint oversight committee in Washington. Her testimony would carry enormous weight, not just because of her rank, but because of the national spotlight now fixed on her. In her private quarters, she prepared. She thought of the younger generation of soldiers, of the immigrants like her parents who had come to America believing in fairness, of every citizen who looked at the uniform she wore and expected integrity in return. Her mission was no longer just about clearing her name. It was about reminding America that authority must always bow to accountability. But she also knew the risks. By challenging the system, she was making powerful enemies. Ridgeview's police union had already issued a statement defending Harding, calling the arrest a misunderstanding. Certain political commentators framed her stance as an attack on law enforcement. The battle lines were being drawn. As she looked into the mirror, Isabella tightened her tie and squared her shoulders. She had faced enemies overseas who carried rifles. Now she would face enemies in suits, behind microphones, in committee chambers. Different battlefield. Same courage required. Tomorrow, the hearings would begin. And when she raised her right hand to swear her oath, the entire nation would be watching. The congressional hearing chamber was packed. Rows of reporters filled the back seats, cameras pointed toward the witness table. Senators and representatives leaned over their microphones, papers stacked high, ready to dissect every detail of what had happened in Ridgeview. At the center of it all sat Commander Isabella Ramirez, her uniform immaculate, her posture unshakable. When she raised her right hand and swore her oath, a hush fell over the room. Millions across the country watched the broadcast live, their eyes fixed on the Latina commander who had turned a humiliating arrest into a national reckoning. The committee chair, Senator Walker, cleared his throat. Commander Ramirez, thank you for your service. Please begin with your statement. Isabella leaned forward, her voice steady. Members of the committee, yesterday, I did not come here as a victim. I came here as a soldier. What happened to me in Ridgeview was not an isolated mistake. It was the consequence of a culture that fosters arrogance, dismisses accountability, and undermines the trust between citizens and those sworn to protect them. She paused, letting her words sink in. I identified myself as a federal officer. I provided my credentials. I gave repeated warnings. Instead of being heard, I was mocked, shoved, and handcuffed. What saved me was not the wisdom of those officers, but the chain of command I serve, the military response that came to my aid. But what about those who cannot summon a convoy of armed MPs? What about the civilians who are silenced, dismissed, or abused every day without recourse? The chamber was silent, the only sound the frantic scribbling of reporters' pens. This is bigger than me, Isabella continued. It's about restoring accountability to authority. It's about ensuring that power does not become arrogance, and that the people we serve, whether in uniform or in civilian life, are treated with dignity. The committee chair nodded gravely. Commander, your testimony will weigh heavily on our decisions. Over the next several hours, senators grilled officials from Ridgeview PD, the mayor's office, and federal oversight agencies. Harding, escorted in shackles, was called to testify. His once smug demeanor was gone, replaced by the pale, hollow expression of a man who knew his career and his freedom were over. Officer Harding, one senator asked sharply, why did you dismiss Commander Ramirez's credentials? Harding stammered. I thought she was bluffing. People lie all the time. I was just doing my job. The senator's voice rose. Doing your job? Your job is to protect and serve, not to abuse and dismiss. You handcuffed a decorated commander of the United States Army in front of civilians, ignored protocol and obstructed federal operations. That isn't doing your job. It's disgracing your badge. The gavel struck, silencing Harding's half-formed protest. By the time the hearings concluded, the verdict was clear. Harding would face federal charges. His partner Riley was reprimanded but spared prison after cooperating. Captain Sims resigned under pressure, his career in ruins, and Ridgeview PD as a whole was placed under federal oversight pending a complete restructuring of leadership and policies. The fallout rippled further. Across the country, police departments received new directives on handling federal personnel. Training protocols were rewritten. Oversight committees were empowered with broader authority. The message was clear. The days of unchecked arrogance were ending. But for Isabella, the story was more personal. She hadn't sought the spotlight, but it had found her. Letters poured in from veterans, immigrants, students, and ordinary citizens. Many thanked her for standing tall, for reminding the country that dignity mattered. Parents wrote about showing her press conference to their daughters, telling them, "This is what strength looks like." Weeks later, Isabella stood at Arlington National Cemetery for a quiet ceremony honoring fallen soldiers. She wore her uniform, medals catching the sunlight as she laid a wreath in silence. A young girl tugged at her sleeve, a daughter of one of the soldiers buried there. "Are you the commander on TV?" the girl asked softly. Isabella smiled, kneeling to meet her eyes. "Yes, but more importantly, I'm a soldier, just like your dad was." The girl nodded, her small hand clutching Isabella's tightly. "You're really brave." Isabella's throat tightened, but she held steady. "Bravery means standing up even when it's hard. Your dad did that, and we must keep doing it too." The girl hugged her before running back to her mother. Isabella rose slowly, her gaze fixed on the rows of white headstones stretching into the horizon. For her, the battle was never about cameras or headlines. It was about duty, honor, and the chain of command that bound her to something larger than herself. Back in Ridgeview, the police station was quieter than ever. Harding's empty desk sat as a reminder of arrogance undone. Riley worked under strict supervision, humbled and changed. Daniels, now promoted, had become a symbol within the department of what it meant to act with integrity, even in the face of pressure. And across America, the image of a Latina commander standing tall after being wrongfully cuffed lingered. It became a story told in classrooms, training sessions, and living rooms, a story of power abused, justice restored, and courage that refused to bow. For Isabella Ramirez, life returned to missions, briefings, and deployments. But she carried something new now, the knowledge that her personal humiliation had sparked a national reckoning. She had turned handcuffs into history. And though she would never say it out loud, deep down she knew. Sometimes the most powerful battles aren't fought overseas or on foreign soil. Sometimes the most important battles are fought at home, on behalf of every voice that deserves to be heard.